Welcome to everyone. Thank you so much for being here. My name is Lindsay Rockwell, and I am very excited to be hosting Michael Favala Goldman's book launch of If You Were Here, You Would Feel at Home. I am also pleased to welcome our guest poets, Jovonna Van Pelt, Mary Foulk, Tommy Twilite. I think of each of their voices as being a kind of force of nature, contributing to the forward movement and fabric of poetry in our community. So a couple of business items I just want to go through. So the chat will be open throughout the event. So please feel free to leave your comments or questions in the chat. We would love to hear your thoughts and feelings as the readings unfold and the music unfolds. And also, if you want to tell us where you are, it's always great to know where people are zooming in. Just a reminder to remain on mute throughout the event. I'm just going to quickly go through the agenda for you guys. We will begin with Jovonna Van Pelt reading, followed by Mary Foulk, then music with Tommy Twilite, followed by Michael Goldman reading poems, followed by a bit more music, and then Michael will finish up with some new poems. Before we end, I'm hoping that we have some time to go through some questions and answers. I will be looking at the chat, and if people want to raise their hands or just raise your hand like that or put it in the signal, we can have a little conversation afterwards. I'd like to offer a new poem of Michael's as a segue as we begin the readings. Music by Michael Goldman. Time is silent. Space is also silent. Who are we to enter? What silence do we have to add? What sound do we have to add that is worthy of silence? I'd like to offer that the sounds about to be offered to you are absolutely worthy of entering and filling silence. Our first poet I'm very excited to welcome is Jovonna Van Pelt. Jovonna writes because she has stories to share. Funny stories, difficult stories, personal revelations, and casual observations of contemporary life. She has been a featured reader for Strong Dog Writers Guild, the Garlic and Arts Festival, Poets at Large, Gateway City Arts, and the Great Falls Word Festival, and a multiple finalist in the Poet Seat competition. Jo's debut poetry collection, Unrelated Questions, published by Human Error Publishing, is the result of serendipity and perhaps a little good karma. Her volume of short stories, Merry and Bright Christmas Memories, is forthcoming in October. She lives happily with her rescue cat in Greenfield, Massachusetts. I am really excited to welcome Jovonna.
Thank you so much, Lindsay, and thank you, Michael. I'm so delighted to be here in support of the book launch of Michael's new publication. My first three poems are from my book, Unrelated Questions. This one is Love and Pottery. He tells us, either you go pro eventually or you stop making pottery. Perhaps he thinks this work isn't art, or you run out of people to give it to. His craft is so professional, no human hand is visible in his plates and cups. But that's where he's wrong. Friends will always accept the beautiful bowl with the wobbled edge from your flawed hand and your perfect heart. This poem is titled Multitasking. At this very moment, I am losing an argument with the universe about how much fun blondes actually have. At this very moment, I am outliving Grandpa, who died at 61 from emphysema and disappointment. He could play the ukulele and always sang my name to the tune of Ramona. At this very moment, I am actively engaged in the benevolent neglect of my garden. Flora that survive will foster the next biological wave and possibly insect rule of the planet. At this very moment, I must tell you I never intend to be obscure. I want words to resonate upon first hearing. I want to say them out loud. We women know that silence is not our friend. At this very moment, days are slipping over the edge. When we first learned the meaning of glioblastoma, we were measuring in months. We are losing our friend. She is not losing us. At this very moment, my benevolent neglect also extends to the cleanliness of my car, paid invoice filing, and the birthdays of cousins once removed. It's no longer tolerable for citizenship. Still twitching from last night's news, I am marching again. At this very moment, there is little reason to expect that Justin Trudeau is sending the limo to pick me up. Though one should not lose all hope, that way lies madness. Madness, as it turns out, runs in the family, but insanity and male pattern baldness stop here. And this last one from the book, do you deserve a medal? My friend Linda thinks she should have a medal for all the things she doesn't say when provoked. That's probably right, knowing her vocabulary. My neighbor wants a prize for massaging kale by the bushel. I think that I took one for the team in the summer of 1970 when I taught French kissing to all the boys who needed it. I imagine my legacy of happy lovers and wives, but there's no way to track the lives I've touched with lips and teeth and tongue. And these are more recent. Talking in our sleep. Contemporary sleep science reports no actual speech is spoken by 99% of dreamers. The 1% are writers, most especially poets, who nurture their words across cranial hemispheres, transcend consciousness in syllables and spaces between human life and dreams. Small wonder the restless brain sleepwalks the passages of image and emotion to find the language of poetry sparked in the mad meandering dark. This title is What We Miss. Nora Ephron said that when she left this earth, she would miss her children and also pie. She didn't specify a flavor. What would you miss? No doubt I would long for favorite things already gone. Mom, my natural knees, those perfectly broken in size 12 jeans. I wouldn't include any of the husbands. I would miss loving friends of flesh or fur, good coffee, peanut butter, red shoes, of course, all that I considered beautiful, and every chance to do something meaningful. You must remember this. Casablanca is the best film ever. Fight me. I've seen it more than 50 times. Bogart's white jacket, Bergman's fedora, champagne, danger, change of tune, change of heart, La Marseillaise. It doesn't take a genius to figure out how much we still need courage, kisses, and beautiful friendship. And my last poem was actually inspired by a poem of Michael's that I heard quite some time ago. And it's dedicated to all the skaters out there. It's called The Long Program. With my partner, I prefer enthusiasm over technique. This approach does have its drawbacks. The Russian judge is typically severe. I'm hopeful that the French will understand. His aching back, my creaking knees, each move requires more patient effort. The years of wear and tear test our endurance, but do not discount the familiar, intricate steps, the easy recovery from accidental elbow, or the sublime finish. We stick the final landing with a flourish every time. Artistic impression evens out the technical score. Laughing, we advance comfortably into the next round. Thank you so much.
Wow. Thank you, Jovonna. Just fabulous. So much life in your work. I just love hearing that. And so many beautiful images, the beautiful bowl with the wobbled edge across cranial hemispheres, just all of that taking us to such incredible places that we would never go without you. So thank you. It is my honor now to introduce Mary Warren Foulk, who has been published in Cathexis Northwest Press, Arla Joe, Palette Poetry, Silkworm, and Steam Ticket, among other publications. Her chapbook, If I Could Write You a Happier Ending, was selected by Dancing Girl Press for their annual series featuring women poets. Her manuscript, Erasures of My Coming Out letter, won first place in the Poetry Box's 2021 chapbook contest. Her manuscript, Self-Portrait with Erosion, was a finalist for the 2021 Javel Press Poetry Award. It is my pleasure to introduce Mary Warren Foulk.
Thank you so much, Lindsay. Thank you, Jovonna. Those were outstanding poems, just beautiful to hear and listen to. And Michael, thank you so much for including me in this beautiful celebration of your the launch of your newest poetry collection. Ever since I received your book, I've just been mining it, rereading, underlining, circling, pulling back the pages. And I'm particularly moved by two poems that I'm obsessing over. The first is Dawn, where you ask us, or say, regardless, I'm still here to invent myself from yesterday's leftovers. And that really was so meaningful. And then whenever possible, broaden, let in more of everything and respond in kind, more laughter, more outrage. And I feel like that's what you offer us in your poetry critique groups. You offer us the chance to bring our leftovers, to bring our whole selves, however raw, however vulnerable, however honest. And then also you help us to broaden, to be better poets and better people. And I'm so grateful. I thought I'd read a sampling of some of the poems that have been informed by the poetry critique from your tutelage and those of my classmates, many of whom are on this call. I think of Lindsay, I think of Mary, I think of Cole, I think of Martha, I think of Burley. So lucky to get your feedback. It's been a gift. The first poem is called Hyacinth Girl, and it's a nod to T.S. Eliot. No one told me how strange this America would feel, an unlikely waiting for its promise. Like a tsunami wave, January 6th, 2021, yawed and seething democracy's doubt. A flag aflame against a laced iridescence. Our sown hyacinth, its parched bulbs, poisonous and spiked, its fading percentage. The last word is a French word. It's used to describe the hyacinth. It's a melding or melting of red, blue, and white. This next poem is called Change Your Mind Day, Central Park, June 2000, and it's a love poem for my wife, Allison. Scene 1, I leave you, walk to 96th, enter the train to find 2 chanting Buddhists in brilliant saffron, counting meditation beads and calmly attending the moment. Scene 2, earlier at Central Park, we spoke a quiet, smiling language, a blue sky, cloudless haiku. The first line, nature, the second line, faith, the third line, love. Scene 3, in the distance, Philip Glass played, expanding, contracting rhythms, music of elm leaves, warbler song, heartbeat, music of our first date, this second, the next. Scene 4, memory of your hands, texture of skin, a trace. Scene 5, departing the station, a blurred tunnel, click-clack of murmurs, each a letter of your name. This poem is called Snapshots of Grace, and it's 3 prose poem blocks. At the time of kind of drafting this, I was reading Post Moxie by Julia Story. The blocks are interconnected. Snapshots of Grace. Framed in sepia, I held the geese. I couldn't have been more than 15. Beyond the photograph, my father looking off into Maryland's winter, not watching my older brother's terrible mercy, the twisted necks. What was it for me holding that prize from his first hunt? I think of this now in church as I watch my children sketch bees of homeward geese. Homeward, the cabin air made us parched. Aisle 36 at the back, where young families are marooned. Bullying often begins with a question. Which one's the mother? My wife and I had been holding hands through the turbulence. Our daughter slept restlessly across our laps. The silencing of a shoulder's turn. From the air, Phoenix looked beautifully parched. Parched grace, how best to invoke? Memory of surviving towers not engineered to dust. A brother's death far too young. Mother's charm through the morphine drip. And how are you? She asked her many nurses. Soaked in wonder, my children run through April's wet grass. At dinner, we hold hands and recite learned prayers, heads bowed to an ancient grace. And then my last poem is entitled Not Just a Box, and it's the first poem introducing my newest collection, Self-Portrait with Erosion. Not just a box. Not just a box, cedar urn with cross inlay, not just surrounding dirt or white daisies sweeping the etched stone, not just the cemetery of cracked headstones or a minister's attempt at sermoned comfort, Not just the limousine rides, medicated blur, reception of egg salad and ritualed awkwardness. Not just one mourner, one memory. Not just the obituary no one wanted to write, life interrupted and adjectives that should have been uttered. Not just lawyers deconstructing your estate of found furniture and homoerotic art. Not just the funeral home's faint smell of ash and incomprehension. Not just that Sunday, our Sundays, too brief, laughter, laughing, laugh. Not just a body's folding, unfolding, not just the heart's attacks, your heart, not just assumptions, not aids, not just our parents' disappointment, that closet, not just silences and silencing, that closet, not just religion's abominations, 6, count them, biblical passages, not just our childhood's red city, red state, not just grief's illusions, your fading image on the subway, not just mother's antique trunk that holds what you last wore, that leather belt I bought you one Christmas, that Izod of peacock blue, not just the neighborhood boys you long for, not just any loss, older brother, mine, not just your name, my whispering, not just you, me, not just questions, words. Thank you.
Thank you. Whoa, such beautiful, powerful language and use of metaphor, a flag, a flame, music of elm leaves, warbler's song. And I feel such a connection with you through your humanity and our humanity. Thank you. Okay, now we're gonna move into some song. I am very excited to introduce our musical guest. Tommy Twilite is a poet, songwriter, and performer who lives in Florence, Mass. He is the co-founder and director of the Florence Poets Society and executive editor of Silkworm, the Society's annual review. Tommy is the Beat Poet Laureate of Massachusetts and the host of the Twilight Poetry Pub on WXOJ-FM Valley Free Radio. His full-length collection, 50 Words for Rain, was published in 2021. Please welcome Tommy Twilite.
Her eyes are not the color of a robin's egg sky. Her lips are not made from red roses. She's 100% natural. No GMOs. A woman right down to her soul. She don't walk through town like Marilyn Monroe. She don't sing like a songbird. She ain't no fashion model, movie star. But her beauty is as deep as tomorrow. Because her arms are all right when she holds me tight and kisses me in the moonlight. Yeah, her arms are all right. Gonna see her tonight and we'll dance together until the sunrise. She don't drive no fancy automobile. She has to work for her money. She's never mean but she's made of steel, whiskey and spice and honey. She makes a tasty chicken pot pie. She's the mother of my children. I'm gonna love her until the day that I die. I ain't never gonna hurt her, because her arms are all right when she holds me tight and kisses me in the moonlight. Yeah, her arms are all right. Gonna see her tonight. We'll dance together until the sunrise. Thank you.
Thank you, Tommy. What a bomb. Thank you so much. So I am now just honored and thrilled to introduce Michael Favala Goldman. Michael has a way of making people feel at home. Even in the midst of his dawning literary stardom, such as his recent interview in The New Yorker and translated short story, The Umbrella, by Tove Ditlevsen, also in The New Yorker, he remains kind, humble, authentic, and generous of heart and mind. All of these qualities, coupled with his passion for poetry and literature, have made him an extraordinary teacher and mentor for myself and many others who are also here today, as well as an inspiration for our community. Today, we celebrate his newest collection of poems. If you were here, you would feel at home, which I think is just an extraordinary title because it's all true. This collection of poems is an invitation I found as I was reading it over and over, into the intimate as a doorway to what it means to be human. Michael is an award-winning poet and translator of Danish literature. His third book of poetry, Small Sovereign, won first place in the 2022 Los Angeles Book Festival. Among his 16 translated books is Dependency by Tove Ditlevsen, which made it to the New York Times Best 10 Books of 2021 as book 3 of the Copenhagen trilogy. Michael lives in Northampton, Massachusetts, where he has been running his famous poetry critique groups since 2018. Let's welcome Michael.
Thanks, Lindsay, but also thanks to Beth, who's running our technology tonight, Mary, Jovonna, and Tommy. I'm having a ball listening to all of you. And so I was at jazz camp all week this week, and I'm reminded of the words of Yusef Lateef, who was a really great jazz educator and instrumentalist. And one of the jazz mentors there said that Yusef Lateef told him when he asked, how do I learn to play this music? What can I possibly offer it? And he said, what you have to offer it is your own unique voice. and I feel like I'm in the company of people who have found their voices. And I know it can take a long time and a lot of hard work to do that. So thank you for joining me here today. I'm going to read some poems from my new collection. I'll just share the cover with you real quick. Okay, oh, here it is. There it is. If you were here, you would feel at home. And that is an actual, somewhat improvised shot of my living room, where I am right now. Okay, let's get rid of that. What else can I tell you? So if you want to buy a copy of the book, you can go to my website, and that way you'd buy it directly from me and I'll sign it for you. You can also buy it from Amazon, which is what the publisher uses, and you can see reviews there. You can also add a review if you want. Most of the poems, or at least, yeah, I guess most of the poems of this collection were paradoxically written when I was not at home. They were written when I was living in Denmark for about 3 months in 2019, just before the COVID pandemic hit. I was there with my wife, Jetta. And I often find, although I'm not the easiest traveler, I do find that being away from home in unusual circumstances, unusual environments, helps generate a lot of new ideas to write about. And this book is dedicated to my wife, Jetta, because so much of what I write is not just a product of my story, but of our story. So this, oh, that was Jetta. This first book, or this first poem, Mary mentioned, begins the book, and it starts also the day, the part of the day that we don't see so much at this time of the year. Dawn. And the particles of light from yesterday, who knows where they went? Did they circle around the earth or bounce back into space, never to return, until the universe folds back on itself to assist with reincarnation, coincidence, and déjà vu? Regardless, I'm still here to invent myself from yesterday's leftovers. If I concentrate, I can make it seem like a brand new day, which my eyes have never seen, my ears never heard. I'm born from sleep, and anything could happen if I keep waking up. If I keep waking up. This next poem, the title is just one letter, I. The way ideas overlap, it's unlikely I will ever have one thought completely to myself. Boundaries are made to be breached, must be perhaps in order to exist. The paradox of the singular. Seawater washes in and out the whirls of a seashell, like sounds and thoughts in my ears and brain. Everything is spiraling, and I must follow, not let my ego hold me, tempt me into an untenable position. So now we do travel to Denmark, to a small town where the glaciers of the most recent ice age did not reach. So the ancient seabed there was not buried in loads of rocks and new dirt when the glaciers receded. And this place has been a quarry of clay for hundreds and hundreds of years. Graham Clay Pit, Graham, Denmark. There is at least one place on earth you can stand and sink a shovel into dry, sticky clay formed 10 million years ago. And the metal blade penetrates. Today's light enters where it's been dark until now. What was forgotten is again in the open. clay, fossils, shells, bones, impossibly old and suddenly new. They were not waiting. They have nothing to gain from our curiosity. So while we were living in Denmark, as I mentioned, the community of Christiania celebrated its 45th anniversary. So Christiania is a community in the city of Copenhagen, which is anarchistic, largely self-governing, an intentional community founded in 1974 by anarchists squatting in abandoned military buildings in the city. As a self-governing community all these years, drugs have always been legal in Christiania, which is one trait that has always marked it as unique. Christiania at 45. There's a wild medicinal smell mixing with dampness of the dirt road as the drizzle falls on Pusher Street, which is not a metaphor, but a place where photographs are not permitted, and a man will solemnly approach you if you take out your phone or camera. There are carts and tables on both sides. Electric, multicolored lanterns hang above like a cheap Rio. Clusters of people ignore the rain. A hand with a knife slices a dark block of hash for a customer, and I pretend I don't find it unusual. I don't wonder about making a living in the lawless quarter, about lives on hold, entrepreneurs, and just people needing rest. We're going to buy a meal at their little restaurant. Think twice about the tap water. Admire the dedication to creating a crusty, dense sourdough to go along with a thin soup of beans and potatoes. Impressive. There is definitely something missing from my life. There's a long tradition of adult education in Denmark. And as part of that, Yet and I joined in and attended a week-long retreat of hiking and viewing art while we were living in Denmark. And this poem came from one of our hikes. Along the Skjern River. We're walking single file down an overgrown path. Cows and electric fence on one side, reeds and river on the other, a long line of hikers. One of them points and shouts, "Look, a cloud of birds." Everyone turns, while the starling's dark formation, like flowing liquid, spreads and gathers, turns towards us, then speeds across the river valley, hundreds of black dots moving in unison. We keep walking. Another one says, "It's so amazing how they move as if they were one creature." I attended a weekend workshop, another workshop, while in Denmark, this one on music improvisation. And one morning, instead of playing in the music school where we were situated, the whole group drove with our instruments to a nearby ancient stone circle, like a small Stonehenge, built over 5,000 years ago. And we danced and played music around the stones. We gathered in the little stone room in the center, played more music, carried on, and then left the Stones pretty much the same as when we had arrived. And that inspired this piece. Soundings. Silence is old and tenacious. Whenever we stop making a fuss, there it is. Silence might be the most valuable thing against which all else is measured and comes up short. We do have fun, don't we? Revolving around the sun. The days so astonishingly empty welcome our thrashing and our music. How else are we to learn? We have to go out in order to find our way back to that place at the bottom of us, at the bottom of everything. It's peaceful there and very quiet. These next couple of poems deal with relationship. The first is interface, which is the point or line where two surfaces or systems meet and interact. Interface. I can't ask for what I want, but I know what to give you. You can ask for what you want, but you don't know what to give me. I don't ask you what you want, but you tell me anyway. You keep asking me what I want, and I don't know what to tell you. I think you should know by now. You think I still don't know. You think I should know by now. I can't believe you still don't know. This one, I'm going to read each stanza twice, somewhat in the spirit of the fabulous poet David White, who loves repetition in his readings. I think this poem might benefit from that, so we'll give that a try. It says, situation. After all this time, you're still giving me not what I want, but what you want me to have, so you can get it from me. After all this time, you're still giving me not what I want, but what you want me to have, so you can get it from me. After all this time, I'm still giving you not what you want, but what I want you to have, so I can get it from you. After all this time, I'm still giving you not what you want, but what I want you to have, so I can get it from you. So my family and I lived in the town of Williamsburg for 5 years, nearby here, and I learned some of its history. For example, in the early, very wet spring of 1874, the town's poorly constructed earthen dam of the Mill River broke, flooding and destroying 4 small mill towns downstream and killing 140 people. And this led to the reform of dam construction in Massachusetts. Water is pretty and useful in the right place. Williamsburg, Massachusetts, 1874. Our town flooded like Jamestown, but not as famously, not as many dead. We had our wall of slurry, 2 stories high, rumble down, taking everything. I welcomed the waves, not because I relished destruction. I was only a little afraid as the water lapped our foundation, sensing the new beginnings to come from the obliteration. I wanted everything to be different. In some ways, it was just not enough. So I'm going to read 2 more poems from the collection and then turn it back to Tommy for another song. This one, I circulated a few videos on social media leading up to this reading today. And one of them was of this poem that I read out in the woods behind my house about the intersection of nature and culture, another one of them. Unfathomable. Nature is a study in approaching infinity. Creeping beetles, grandfather trees, ocean swells, all the same fabric stretched infinitely thin and deep across the surface of the planet. Try and replicate it. You cannot succeed with rational thinking. And then this next and last poem from the book also came out of the music improv workshop in Denmark. There's something really unique about playing music together because the experience is so fleeting. As every note is played, the one before it is gone. But I think there's something true to that, perhaps in any intimate meeting, and perhaps even our meeting here today. I'm going to read this poem in Danish first, and then English, and then pass it back to Tommy. Jeg møder dig et sted, som ikke findes. Vi eksisterer, og når vi mødes, forsvinder vi. Og mødet forsvinder, mens vi bliver ved at mødes. Hvad eksisterer er mindet om et sted, som ikke findes. Bortset fra mindet og mødet. I meet you in a place which does not exist. We exist. We exist. And as we meet, we disappear. We exist. And as we meet, we disappear. And the meeting disappears as we keep meeting. We exist, and as we meet, we disappear. And the meeting disappears as we keep meeting. What exists is the memory of that place. The memory of that place, which does not exist. What exists is the memory of that place, which does not exist, except in memory and in meeting, except in memory and in meeting. So thank you. I'm going to take a quick break. Tommy's going to sing, and then I'll be back with some new poems.
the cock will crow and the hen will squawk. Daddy always wants what he ain't got. Coffee's percolating in the pot. LS means MFT. Daddy likes his luckies. The screen door slams. Mama's in the kitchen with her black iron pan. Daddy likes his bacon. Wait a minute. I'm going to throw this phone out the window. Shut up, you son of a bitch. Jesus. You start that again. Well, the cock will crow and the hen will squawk, 'cause Daddy always wants what he ain't got. Coffee's percolating in the pot. LS means MFT. Daddy likes his luckies. The screen door slams. Mama's in the kitchen with her black iron pan. Daddy likes his bacon and eggs. Mama keeps her honey in a jar by the window. Daddy looks out and sees the day. LS means MFT. Daddy likes his luckies. LS means MFT. Daddy likes his luckies. I am devoted to you. You are devoted to me. We are devoted to this. It's what we do. Suicide knob on the wheel. The tractor's getting rusty. That's the way of iron and steel. Daddy likes his luckies. Mama's crying, but it ain't no use. The chickens always come home at night to roost. You can't grow tomatoes in the barnyard. You can't grow flowers on the roof. LS means MFT. Daddy likes his luckies. LS means MFT. Daddy likes his luckies. I'm devoted to you. You are devoted to me. We are devoted to this. It's what we do. Suicide knob on the wheel. The tractor's getting rusty. That's the way of iron and steel. Daddy likes his luckies. Valentine XXX. In the Frigidaire, the radio is playing something old. Mama's dancing across the kitchen. Daddy laid out on the floor. LS means MFT. Daddy likes his luckies. LS means MFT. Daddy likes his luckies.
Thanks a lot, Tommy. It means a lot to me that you're here and that you could sing for us. This next poem is actually dedicated to Tommy because at least partly back when I was working as a carpenter and just starting on this path as a writer 13 years ago, Tommy welcomed me to the Florence Poet Society, and he also had me as a guest on his poetry radio show. And I will always be grateful to you, Tommy, for welcoming me into the local writing community. So thank you. This is Felling a Tree with Tommy Twilite's poetry advice for Tommy. This tree was even bigger than the one we'd brought down together. I was going to try and drop it into a gap in the woods to the left. But after tossing my throw bag up towards a crotch about 35 feet up, about 20 times, I realized I had burned a hole through my glove with the friction from the string and burned a hole through the skin of my finger as well. So I re-examined the prospect and decided the tree really wanted to fall to the right. The blood was minimal. Then I stood behind this 150-foot red oak with the 12-foot circumference and a large black gouge at the base where carpenter ants had chewed their way in. And I thanked the oak for the air, for the shade, for the shelter for all the tiny creatures, for the fungi, the lichen, and now for the wood, which will keep our house warm. I decided to make my mouth cuts higher than usual to guard against any surprises from the weakened trunk. As I leaned into the cut, I saw that the metal gripping teeth beside the bar of the saw were missing a screw and dangling. This was going to make the job more challenging, but I wasn't about to stop now. I finished the first mouth cut about 1/3 of the way in, just as I wanted. The second cut was more difficult, not having the leverage I would have enjoyed from the gripping teeth. The wedge-shaped void revealed the heart of the trunk, black and punky, even here 5 feet off the ground, channeled out by the ants. But I thought there would be enough good wood around it for my hinge. Finally, I made the back cut, easing past the center of the trunk about 4 inches above my mouth cut until I heard a creak. The tree tipped forward about 5 degrees, and I stepped back 5 steps. I stepped up and cut another inch, and the tree tipped forward a couple more degrees and stopped. I looked up. A branch near the top on the side was leaning against the branch of a neighboring tree. Otherwise, the oak was aimed right in the direction I had planned. Cutting more of the hinge away was risky. So I decided to hope for wind. Then I decided to go to my shed and grab my digging bar. Maybe I could pry into the space I had opened with my cuts and lever the tree past the offending branch. Considering the tonnage of this oak, I knew it was a long shot. As I walked back from my shed through the trees, the iron bar on my shoulder, there was a swishing, a crashing, several booms, breaks, and a slam as the giant hit the earth. Call it luck, call it prayer, call it poetry. You should have been there. It was awesome. In his book, Steal Like an Artist, Austin Kleon writes, "Enjoy your obscurity while it lasts." So, as a translator and a poet, you're pretty much inviting obscurity, right? But I can say last week, I was interviewed by Rattle Magazine, my absolute favorite poetry journal. they feature an interview at the end of every issue. And they decided to have me as their next interview on the theme of poetry translation. It's coming out in September, and it will be sent to their 10,000 subscribers. The interview is 18 pages long, and I tell all my favorite stories from years of working with Danish authors, of meeting the national poet of Denmark, to having a poet give me permission to translate her poems from her deathbed. So I highly recommend signing up for Rattle's daily poem, which is wonderful, and also subscribing to their quarterly journal. You won't regret it. Irony. The ghost inside me seeks every opportunity to make this day about me. Each wall a mirror, each face an insult or compliment. I am here for a reason, to pile on validation that I'm here for a reason. And around I go in the circle cage of days, the light changing, the leaves changing, and I wonder where the time goes. So Glen Canyon has been in the news a little bit because Lake Powell, which is where what used to be Glen Canyon when it was dammed up is located, is down to 20% of capacity out west. And that enters in this next poem, David Brower. If you don't know, he was a founder of the Sierra Club, the Earth Island Institute, and Friends of the Earth. And this poem is David Brower, Glen Canyon, 1956. The river was still undammed, cliffs visible, wildlife unknowing their fate. When the water rose, some would proliferate, some disappear, and people would come on jet skis and in rental canoes, not as well equipped as this canoe parked on the bank. Though the executive order had been set in motion, the river was still free, and he didn't know. He could still see nature according to herself as he sat on a log, his grilled steak sagging over the edges of his Sierra Club cup. That night under the stars, he dreamed of living under the water with all the happy creatures. This next water-oriented poem is extremely short, so I'm going to read it twice. Jellyfish, you are mostly water in an odd-shaped bag with a few strings attached. Jellyfish, you are mostly water in an odd-shaped bag with a few strings attached. Chief Seattle said famously, "What we do to the earth, we do to ourselves." The woman in my life. The earth is not weak, nor suffering. She is power and peace. The least rumble on her surface sends all scurrying. What is weak and suffering is my connection to her. I am afraid to surrender, to love so unabashed. I'm going to take a quick detour into a poem that has rhyme and a specific structure, a villanelle, which is made up of 3-line stanzas. So the first and third line rhyme, and all the second lines rhyme with each other. And then there's a rhyming couplet with those same rhymes at the end. Cramped villanelle. There's an elephant in the room. Let's use a Ouija board to learn its name. Maybe we can shoo it with a broom. Our sound barrier might break with a boom when we tell the other they're to blame for there being an elephant in the room. You know what happens when you assume and deny the reasons why it came. Maybe we can shoo it with a broom. Could it be an old ghost in a costume who lost its way and wandered to our game, becoming an elephant in the room? Haven't you smelled its unbearable perfume? I'm afraid to check if it's tame. Maybe we could shoo it with a broom? Would the emptiness be too much to presume? And who will clean the leftover shame? Maybe we can shoo it with a broom. There's an elephant in the room. Every day with you. The stakes go higher, like on a game show. Will I be a winner, or will I lose it all on the next question? These last 3 poems all center on the idea of connection. This first one was part of the 30 Poems in November event from the Center for New Americans last year, which helped settle immigrants and refugees to Western Massachusetts. And it considers the idea of a hologram, which is an amazing thing because it projects a 3D image from a 2D surface. But if you break off part of the holographic plate and send the light or laser through that, a piece of it, it still gives the entire image. Hologram of the infinite. You are built of bits and leave bits everywhere, just like me. You pick up traces without even trying, in your breath, on your skin, ash from volcanoes, photons from stars. You are a repository, an encyclopedia where the universe can look up anything. You don't need to be self-aware. You just need to look around. Whatever you discover was already there, was already here. If all else were obliterated, I could be recreated from you. So in the last couple of years, we have been shown in no uncertain terms how we are connected worldwide as human beings. And that in some ways, borders and walls that were originally meant to defend and protect us are actually ineffective and counterproductive. I was in a webinar yesterday with people from Ukraine and from all over the world discussing the consequences of the Russian invasion, which will be felt for decades. And the people of Ukraine were saying that they had created a country of widespread prosperity and human rights. And that with help from the rest of the world, they were not about to just let Russia take that away and return them to a rule of dictatorship and oppression. Meanwhile, I hear on the news that tens of thousands of Ukrainians are being forcibly deported to Russia as history repeats itself and violence repeats itself. So I'm praying for an end to this war. I'm praying for us as humanity to value human rights and that all communities move towards peace and justice. I see the liberation of Ukraine as a symbol of liberation and human rights for people everywhere wanting to move towards more freedom and equality. What they say when they greet each other is Slava Ukraini. Now, I'll put into the chat some links to organizations that the Ukrainians recommended people support. And this following poem I wrote about a month before the Russian invasion, and is dedicated to a translator colleague of mine. And it will be published with several other anti-war poems that I wrote in the next issue of Word Peace. Solidarity for AHR. I returned to Siberia, the village of my childhood. My aging relatives, wrinkled and sick in multiple ways, an ambulance for my uncle the day after Christmas. My husband and I went walking in 45 below, avoiding streets where wolf packs snap up neighbors' dogs. The tip of his nose turned white, so we had to go back. They said there would be no helicopters the first 2 weeks of January, so I bribed a driver to get us out of there. 10 hours in his car down a frozen river to the nearest station town. Luckily, when we passed a car capsized in the ice, my husband was asleep. 3 days on the train, and we were in Moscow, liberated. I am Russian, but not solely. My roots are Ukraine and Romania. I do not believe in Mother Russia, who eats her neighbors and exiles their children. When we came home to our apartment in Athens, it was 15 Celsius. I went to the beach 3 days in a row to lie in the sun. That was 2 weeks ago, and I've been sick ever since. I am 5 feet tall and thin as a rail. I speak 7 languages. My name is Anna. What's yours? Those last lines always get to me. Finally, one last poem of connection, an uplifting poem, I think, and also the reason we're all here. Ode to Zoom, an account which bears my name among its subscribers, a concept, a digitized window which opens by a cursor on a button, like a telescope, brings my eye to the precise place you are. And I gaze on you, gazing on me. We see ourselves and each other, our backgrounds, a beach, a bookcase, a blur. And you speak directly to me, your voice nearly instantaneous. I nearly forget, this is not you. This is sights and sounds of Zoom's pixels and bits. And while alone, I do not feel alone. Zoom, you take my life places it has never been. Tulsa and Trafalgar, while pestilence plagues. I am safe in your sterile confines. You host internships for nuns in Bangladesh, choirs in Chicago, audits for accountants in Australia, cooks in Ethiopia. You are unflappable, save for inclement weather, which does get to you, freezes your squares, slurs your audio, pictures go inanimate, then black, lost momentarily. But Zoom, you return, there for us again, purveying short story oratories, first dates, writing rooms, yoga classes, memorial services, circumstantial chats, witness to the simple miracle of connectivity. Thank you all for listening to the poetry. If anyone had a question or a comment that they wanted to share, a line or a poem that spoke to you, something that felt true, you can raise your hand or use the symbol on the screen. You can unmute yourself when recognized. Lindsay, if you can help me, that would be great.
Sure.
If you saw any questions in the chat that you want to bring up, and when those run out, we'll just sign off.
Yeah. Does anybody have any comments, questions for Michael?
Lauren Price.
Hey,
Did you
Lauren.
have your hand up? I'm so sorry. You are on mute. There you go.
I'm so, first of all, I apologize for coming in so late, but I enjoyed what I heard and it was just beautiful. I want to know where I could get your books because you have more than one, and that one I love. I liked what I heard so far. So
Awesome.
yeah, wow.
Yeah,
Yeah.
thanks, Lauren. It might be in the chat. My website actually might not be in the chat yet, but
There it is. I see it.
MichaelFavalaGoldman.com. That's it. Just my name. If you Google that, you can buy any of my books there, and I'll sign it for you before I mail it out.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for coming.
Great. Anyone else want to ask a question or a comment? There. Okay, Cole. Yes, please.
Hi, Michael, this is something I've wanted to ask you for ages, and one of the poems you read today kind of brought it to the forefront. Do you write in Danish? And why and when and why not?
Yeah. So rarely, it's not my mother tongue, right? But it does happen sometimes, especially if I've been in Denmark for a while, now then the languages start to even out in my brain, and sometimes the Danish comes out first. So, but although I don't write in Danish, I have translated, I don't know, maybe 20 of my poems into Danish, because sometimes I feel like they also could have a home there. And I've even sent some of them to Danish literary journals. There's not very many, there's just a few over there. I haven't had anything published in Danish yet, but who knows, maybe someday. But thanks for asking.
Great. Anyone else have a question or a thought?
I had a question for Michael. Hi, everybody.
Hey, Lori.
Hi. Your poems sometimes feel like you spend a lot of time with Danish poetry and Danish poets. I'm wondering how much that has had an influence on you. Danish poetry has had an influence on your poetry. I think I feel there's some kind of a link there somehow.
Yeah, there definitely is. I really took myself seriously as a translator first, long before I took myself seriously as a poet. And what I found, part of what I found in translating Danish poets was the ones that I particularly liked was that they had a great sense of humor, or irony. They were really great storytellers, and also that there's something about putting myself in someone else's voice. I really loved that. And somehow that gave me permission to find my own voice and figure out what that was. And so I am grateful to the Danish poets who allowed me to translate their work, because it helped me to hone in on what my voice was. So it absolutely came first and had a huge impact. Thank you.
Yes, Mary.
I was just curious. I always love to hear what and who you're reading right now, and what elements of craft are you focusing on?
Yeah. So I'm reading, the book that I'm reading most right now, or maybe the only one, is called Colonize This. It's edited by Daisy Hernandez and another writer I don't remember the name of, but it's an anthology of women of color and non-binary women of color, about their experiences of growing up in a white patriarchal society and how that can change. So anyway, so that's what I'm reading right now. As far as elements of poetry, the element that I'm focusing on is writing something every day, however bad it might be, but just doing that, just keeping the ink flowing, keeping the emotions flowing to the surface. And then once in a while I get lucky and there's something I can keep.
Great. We are at 5:29.
Yeah.
Anybody else with a quick question or thought?
So I have a really short poem that I could end with.
Eileen, oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
It was just a quick, I miss being able to clap, and so I just wanted to out loud say how much I really appreciate and enjoyed this. And so I just wanted to say it because you couldn't hear when we were clapping, and I feel like you missed that. That's all. So
thank you, Eileen. So let me read this one last really short poem, and then Beth, if you want to unmute everyone and people can clap, that would be great. This is another new poem. Basis. It is the things we do not understand which make life go. The wind, the mind, the earth turning tilted just so. Thank you, everyone, for coming today.
So much, Michael. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now you can bark. Bark your.